What's up, guys? It's your boy the Chat Kid. Sorry for the last previously really short video. I don't know why it was so short. Anyway, let's just get right back into it because I'm recording this basically immediately after. Still, this didn't belong here and I knew it. For a moment I considered the fact that I'd actually broken a ROM file from overuse. After taking a screenshot to specifically show all of you Mario Bros fans out there, I picked up the key and opened the door, thinking the game would seize up and I'd have to restart. Instead, it opened up a new path on the map selection screen. A whirlpool next to Baz's already creepy head cave thing. I pressed the right arrow and moved onto the whirling drain. Oh god, no. This didn't really strike me as odd, because if you're familiar with the Mario World games, there's an area called Star Road that you may know that has similar names. It's just stuff like tubular and awesome and all manner of dumb words and phrases. Most of the areas were called Vanilla Forest 1 and Donut Mountain 3 and all that, but there were maps with odd names like that. What did concern me though was Mario's expression. Surprise? Shock? Fear? I entered the map. Oddly enough, the whirlpool in the middle of a lake began with the standard castle entry animation. Mario walked up to a castle, looked up, and then went in. I could tell it was underwater though because of the bubbles that periodically emerged from the sprite's mouth and floated to the top of the screen. Inside the castle it started to look more and more like I was in fact experiencing a glitch. There was no room to jump, no room to do anything but run left and right. I must have gone right for 10 to 20 minutes just holding the B button and running along at full speed. After a while I ran into one or two more blind boos in the darkness above, then 3 or 4, then the full screen was full of them. They kind of just stood there, doing nothing. They wouldn't chase me if I turned my back with them, as with the previous blind boo. If I made any noise like Mario's jump sound, they would just kind of shudder a bit, like they heard the sound of Mario's movements, but couldn't do anything about it. Then something made me stop and turn the other way. Now I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt this map was specifically designed to screw with the player. Not only because the giant bleeding bill was hemorrhaging profusely from its face, but because it was inescapable. There was literally no way to avoid being killed by it, as you can clearly see above. That is, unless you're like me and have the Game Genie cheats on hand. I switched the code on for permanent invincibility. I let the bleeding bill chase me for a while I was invincible, just to get a good look at the thing. I stopped and killed it with my invulnerable touch. Only when I saw a message I hadn't been there when I passed before. I hate you. That kind of creeped me out. But on the other hand, it was kind of interesting because it meant this was definitely a map that was supposed to exist. There was some sort of plot element here, something undiscovered. What did it mean? Who hated me? King Koopa seemed the obvious answer. Or maybe it was the ghosts. When you're in a haunted castle that you found by way of a haunted ship, a bloody looking hate message isn't so unbelievable. I saw it again as I approached some giant boos. I was thankful that the blind boos ended up at that point, because the more I watched them shudder, the uneasier I felt, almost empathetic towards them, etc. The thankfulness ended when I turned my back on the giant boos and this happened. Giant boos with faces I've never seen before. They always looked mad at being awake and they're angry that you were invading their haunted houses all across the Mario World island. This was different and it looked gleeful, demented. I could see right down their throats, which seemed odd given the lack of detail their mouths usually displayed. And yes, of course, I'm going to address what you saw in that picture. Why won't you die? I don't know. Am I supposed to? Who's asking? I let the giant boos touch me and they died like the bleeding bills, of which I had encountered 2. Despite any attempt to scare the player, I knew that being invincible meant invincible no matter what they threw at me. After a while of running down this strange claustrophobic corridor with no more eventful happenings, I came to a room with an exit pipe. Taking the pipe downward, I came out the other end and dropped into a room filled with water. The water made sense, this being a sunken castle and all. I was rewarded for my troubles with a question mark block that released a mushroom for me. I could have easily done this with a cheat code, but thought I'd escape me whilst I faced all these new and strange sights. The first creature I had encountered in the underwater portion of the castle were thwomps. Unless you've been living under a rock since the mid-80s, you know that thwomps are stone-like square creatures which hang from the ceiling and fall whenever you come near. They try to crush you, essentially. Well, these thwomps, lined up in a tight row, dropped repeatedly and randomly with no real trigger or any sense or logic. They would just wait to drop whenever they seemed to feel like it. It also looked like these thumps had been very successful. More cartoony blood. This is getting pretty unusual for the Mario Bros. Franchise, which I hadn't recalled seeing blood in it at all. Now I'd seen it used 3 times. The bloody bills, the messages, and these perpetually smashing, grinding thwomps who are working their victims, into pulp forever. In the hampering effects of the water, I walked slowly underneath these things, making sure every single one touched me and died. There were almost 30 of them in a row. The sight of them endlessly crushing over and over again just made me hate them with an unsettling intensity. What's weird is that the blood caused my life to slide if it was at an ice level. After walking through the gauntlet of depravity, I swam once more into an open area that filled with spikes on the floor and ceiling. It was difficult to swim in this manner without touching the spikes, but since I was invincible, I didn't think much of it. I avoided them more for the fun out of any sense I'd be damaged. It stopped being fun really fast, though. Now I knew what was going on. The bloody mess, the thumps were unendingly splattering. It was the other Marios, past Marios that had tried to traverse this level and failed. I have to admit this is an excellent touch, even if it was a bit ghoulish. Whoever designed the map actually broke the fourth wall and showed you the bloated, motionless abortions of the player's uncareless treatment of Mario's tiny life. The bodies only floated straight up and down a tiny bit, as if to show you the effects of a light current. It was genius, and I couldn't believe that I might be the first and only person to ever see this. I toyed with the idea of taking more than one screenshot that I just presented to you, basically so all of you reading this could enjoy the secret map as much as I did, especially with this weird touch. But without swimming, without kicking or moving it anywhere, the dead Mario started to come at me like torpedoes. Their faces remained blank and blue and dead, but they moved with astounding speed. They angled and positioned and worked themselves all sorts of unique trajectories that almost left me with nothing to move. They continued coming at me and swarming and backing up just to try again, and I couldn't bring myself to let them touch me. I moved with more speed and skill than I'd ever exerted, frantically trying to keep Mario free of the drowning victims that seemed dead set on rocketing straight at him. When I finally reached the purple exit pipe you see above, there had to be about 10 of those things right behind, pitching, turning and chasing me. I entered the pipe as fast as I could. Thankfully it worked properly and had Mario out of that situation in a heartbeat. The corridor that followed was empty, thankfully. It was just a blue underwater hallway of sorts with nothing to avoid or kill. It was boring and predictable that the game had been all these years, which brought back a sense of safety. At the end of the hallway, I came to a standard pair of doors you'd enter to face the final boss. Besides the doorway, a mushroom power-up. Ooh. I didn't touch that shit. Going through the door was as you'd expect. The typical change of map views occurred, and Mario was standing on the ubiquitous bridge over boiling lava. Or had it been blood all along? When Mario walked out onto the bridge, however, there was no boss creature. Instead, Mario immediately froze and looked to the side. I couldn't control him anymore. He just stood there. Keep looking until you see it. I didn't even see it at first, so I don't expect you to notice it right away. If you still haven't spotted the thing, look in the third window from the left. FYI, that's not usually there. Mario seemed to regain his composure and looked back and forth, slowly surveying the room. There was still no boss, and I still couldn't control him, so I just stopped trying and just watched. Then it went on, and on, for what seemed like forever. Nothing happened. Then a familiar face walked in from the right, dressed in green, tall and angry. It was Luigi.